Shalom, I'm Rabbi Jonathan Ginsburg of the Ezra Habanim Niles Township Jewish Congregation, Skokie, Illinois. This video will be about sacrifices, korbanot. We're now reading in the Torah and Leviticus the ancient way in which the Jewish people worshipped. And there's a lot of discussion about this. The Torah has a lot of rules and details about the way in which we offered animals up as a gift to God. Now the basic orientation is this. The Torah does not say you must bring sacrifices. I command you to do that. The Torah says when a person brings a sacrifice, and that gave rise to the explanation by our great medieval sages, foremost among them Maimonides, that God didn't really want animal sacrifices. It was a concession to humans. Human beings at the beginning, before the Bible, sacrificed their children. There was something called Moloch worship. They believed the god Moloch wanted you to kill your children. Now, as crazy and abhorrent as we think that is, just this week in the newspaper we saw a story in Iraq about a family that was driving with their children, got through a checkpoint because they had kids in the car, then abandoned the car with the kids still inside and blew up the car to try and kill people. These people thought, as horribly as it is impossible to imagine that God wanted them to offer up their children, in the same way that suicide bombers are encouraged by their parents as heroes in killing innocent people. Well, the Torah wanted to put a stop to that, and hence the Torah reading on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Genesis 22, where it really wouldn't be surprising in the ancient Near East for God to command Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. What is really surprising is that at the end of that story, the angel says, no, Abraham, don't do it. And hence was born the substitute sacrifice, that of animals. And so until the year 70, when the Second Temple was destroyed, one of the primary means the Jewish people had of atoning for sin and of trying to come to grips with their own transgressions and to offer thanksgiving and communal sacrifice and communal well-being was through sacrificing animals and grain. And slowly the people evolved out of that. Now in the prophetic period you have both kinds of attitudes expressed by Isaiah and others as to Isaiah wanting sacrifices to be offered, but all the prophets saying they shouldn't be offered if people are going to offer them and continue to act unethically. Now at the same time, hundreds of years before sacrifice ended, we already have the beginnings of Pharisaic Judaism, that of Jews praying and studying and worshiping God in traditional ways. The most dramatic moment occurred in the year 70, when the temple was burnt on the 9th of Av, 2 months and 1 day before Yom Kippur. Now, our ancestors felt that if they did not offer the Yom Kippur sacrifice, they were in huge trouble. And they expressed, the sages of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai expressed their deep concern that they would never be able to rebuild the temple in time and get permission to go back to offer that Yom Kippur sacrifice. So Yochanan ben Zakkai, the great sage, transformed Judaism by saying to his disciples that we have a means that's just as efficacious, as good as sacrifice, and that is the kind of Judaism we practice today. The Judaism of studying our texts and of praying and of doing good deeds. Now, there are other religions that still believe that the primary means of effecting atonement is through the sacrifice of a third party. In fact, as you know, Christianity believes that their God died for the sins of all humanity. But Judaism evolved in a different way 2,000 years ago, saying no longer do we believe in cathartic atonement like that. Every individual must atone for ourselves and must pray and worship and study and to achieve God's relationship in that way. And that is the primary way we look at sacrifice. There are some Jews today who still believe the temple should be rebuilt or will be rebuilt and sacrifices will be resumed, but we don't pray for the resumption of the sacrifices anymore. We believe that that was a period of Jewish history, and today we are in a new era for the last 2,000 years of repentance, prayer, and doing good deeds. That is our take on the sacrifices. The most important part to remember, though, is that sacrifice itself is not a Jewish word. That's an English word. The Hebrew is korban, from the root karov, which means to draw close. The whole goal is to draw close to God. And the way we do that today is not by sacrificing animals, but by praying and studying. And finally, for those who think that it's so primitive, I have an interesting story from an old rabbi of mine when we were making fun of sacrifices as adolescents. He said, how many of you are vegetarians? Well, none of us were. He said, okay, so you barbecue for the greater glory of you, whereas our ancestors barbecued for the greater glory of God. Which is superior? Something to think about. Shalom.